Historical. One word was used for this game weekend. 6 ranked matchups. 6 losers left hanging. 3 are out of the AP poll. You just gotta love college football. Week 4 was maybe one of the most anticipated weeks we've had in a while. Saturday never disappoints. Or did it? My name is Jens, and this is your AFCB College Recap Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the ultimate pleasure to finally welcome back to the greatest podcast on earth, the college football podcast of AFCB. Alexis, welcome back to the show. We've missed you. Dirk has been here for the past 3 weeks. He's been amazing. Thank you very much, Dirk. But we all know college football is not complete without Alexis having the worst takes on the face of the earth. Welcome back, man.
Thank you, Jens. I'm very glad to be back. It has been a tough couple of weeks, I would say, but that's not entirely true. It was nice, but I missed college football for sure,
Yeah,
and I'm happy
you were
to be
in
back in this
America.
podcast.
You were in America,
I
like the
was.
home of college football when it all kicked off. You were there. How was it? Was it as amazing as people set it out to be, or didn't you get the full college experience when you were there? College football
I
experience. Let me just put it like this, because there are some other college experiences.
Indeed. No, so that's the first games were when I was in Chicago, but of course it was with my girlfriend and her family, so I didn't get to watch everything I wanted to. Um, so the first weekend, I just could watch some football in my hotel room. Once we got back, I got the end of Wyoming versus, then I forgot, Wyoming, Texas Tech, I
And
think.
in week
Yeah,
one,
Texas Tech.
yeah, there
Yeah,
was
in
the
week
it was
one.
the upset.
It was a nice overtime game.
Yeah,
I remembered I tipped the game to as another game to watch, and it was nice to see it turn out that way. So yeah, the first weekend I didn't get to see a lot. I watched a few highlights because, of course, I wanted to see how my teams did.
your
Um,
teams
but
are University of
teams,
North Carolina, because you have about 10 teams, I have the impression.
that's not
But
that's
it
not true.
the at least there's one
I have
clear
sympathy
favorite
for
in.
some teams. I have sympathy
All
for
right,
some teams, but I have
just
a
name them
few.
all for those who don't know yet.
Yeah, okay, so you mentioned one of them, UNC, North Carolina, Tennessee, Penn State, and Oregon. Those are my four go-to teams. And yes, that seems like a lot, but it kind of grew into one team per conference, except for the Big 12. There I'm more neutral. So
Yeah,
yeah, next
it's
year will
still
be a
feasible.
tough choice for me in the Big
It's
10.
still feasible to have like one team per conference, but indeed, as you say, it's going to be a lot more difficult. And realignments are keeping, yeah, the
Yeah,
news going, and probably next year's as well, because maybe we have a pack two next year, or maybe we don't. Like it's going to keep on happening. And
I'm very
and
interested in what will happen to those two teams if they get to the Mountain West or if the Pac-12 continues to exist with a few other teams. I don't know, but it's those are both good teams. Oregon State and Washington
yeah,
State. We'll get to that
yeah,
later.
indeed.
It would be a shame to see them go away in this
Yeah,
in the
because
Power Five actually.
yeah, we're gonna talk about it a little later, but I think, and it's a quick early take, but in my opinion, it was maybe the best or most entertaining game we've had this weekend, because as I maybe said in introduction, it was a historical weekend, in a sense that we've had 6 ranked matchups from the get-go.
Yeah, for the first
And
time in a long, long, long,
yeah,
long
it's
time,
been
I
since
think.
2017, and then we
Mm.
had actually 2 weeks where we had um, 7 ranked matchups. But since then, it's never been more than 6, or it's always been less than 6. So in that sense, you had the anticipation starting from the release of the AP poll. the previous week. You knew were going to be 6 matchups. There was some great ones on there. Ohio State Notre Dame was going to be the big one. College Game Day was actually going there, and
Yeah,
I don't
that-
know what you think, but if you look at it, maybe there were some other weeks that had better results or more entertaining games. If you look at it
yeah.
in a broader sense.
Of course, oftentimes that's the case, that's within all sports is the same. When you hype up a weekend, sometimes it's not what you expected. Like last year we had a Penn State, Ohio State. That was a game we all looked forward to, or even Penn State, Michigan, and those two games were kind of a letdown. Even Georgia, Tennessee was kind of a letdown in the end. So yeah, you can hype up a few games. So there were six ranked matchups, but we could have expected, of course, that not all of them were going to be very entertaining games. Not to say they were good games, because some people like to see a defensive game, some don't, but that's probably what we see as more entertaining, a high scoring game. Of course, that's more for me too. It's more fun to see a high scoring game, but let's not forget that the defense had a big part in that too.
Yeah, and although it's maybe not as entertaining as you would like, because everybody watches college football because there's some big scores, great highlights, and we've shared a few on the socials last weekend. But although some games could maybe be some kind of a letdown because it's more a defensive struggle than it's an offensive fireworks, you still learn a lot from these games. And there's some teams in the CFB right now that we didn't really know a lot about because they were playing lesser opponents, and these weeks actually give us the opportunity for the first time to kind of get a sense of where these teams are going. And one of the teams nobody actually knew what to say about was Colorado, and I know you have a very strong opinion on that one.
I
So
mean,
I,
everybody knew what to say about them. Everyone had a strong opinion about them, not only me. So you saw the media hype them up very, yeah, to a very high level, and then you saw fans of other teams who kind of started to hate on him.
mhm,
So yeah, the media was high on him, the fans a bit less. Um, and yeah, then this game
yeah,
was a big test. Of course, we talked about this. TCU was their first big test, their first real test. Let's call it like this. But yeah, the Oregon game. Since
okay,
since the TCU game, this was the first game they were going to get tested.
yeah. And about the hype, everybody was talking about it, and that's actually one of the reasons why I love Coach Prime, because he got everybody talking about college football. But the result is, if you fly high, you can fall pretty low. And Dan Lanning, coach of Oregon, actually had something to say about it for the first time ever in a college football podcast. We have a clip, but here he is talking about Colorado just before the game, talking to the players of Colorado.
Rooted in substance, not flash. Rooted in substance. Today, we talk with our pads. You talk with your helmet, right? Every moment. The Cinderella story is over, man. Right? They're fighting for clicks, we're fighting for wins. There's a difference, right? There's a difference, right? This game ain't gonna be played in Hollywood, it's gonna be played on the grass, right? It's gonna be played on the grass. Let's go.
Yeah, so that was Dan Lanning, coach of Oregon, going off pre-game. We are fighting for wins. They are fighting for clicks. College
Yeah,
football is played on the grass, not in Hollywood. What do you have
a
to say
pretty
about that?
pretty bold statement to make that beforehand. But of course, when you can back it up, that's very nice. As we all know, the final score was 42-6 for the Oregon Ducks against Colorado. So yeah, at halftime it was already 35-0, 32-0. I don't
Yeah,
remember exactly. 35-0, I
35.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
35.
35-0 at halftime, and even then, Dan Lanning didn't stop. He told the reporters on the field that they were not done yet. They were not satisfied. Okay, they scored only 7 after that, but still, Colorado was already knocked down at that moment in
Yeah,
time. So
that's like a guy
pretty,
saying, "I don't. I've had too little to drink after having like a full carton of beers and then only having one drink and stumbling down to sleep."
a shot of
That's kind
whiskey
of
to go to sleep.
yeah. Yeah, we're not done yet. One shot and he goes down. But
But of course, you have
Oregon didn't go down.
no. But you have to understand why, I think, because once you're up 35-0 and you see that your defense is still holding them to 0 points, why would you give your best? Why would your offensive coordinator show plays that he can use in the next few weeks instead of today against
You're
Colorado? So
correct.
I understand why yeah, they let their foot off the gas a bit. So you have to
Yeah,
understand it. But of course, you don't have to say at halftime we're not done yet if you're going
yeah.
to do that.
You keep it indeed vanilla, and that's something that most of us don't actually realize. You're always playing, or you're always putting up tape that somebody can use against you.
Mm.
And once you're in that position of Oregon of being up 35 at halftime, you just keep it vanilla. You don't put your
Yeah,
best foot forward because indeed there are going to be some tough matchups still for Oregon in the coming future. They
yeah.
still
The
play
Pac-12 is
Washington.
stacked, so
Yeah, they still play
mm,
Washington in 2 weeks, then Washington State, then Utah, then USC, then Oregon State. They still play five ranked matchups, and if you can if you can just give them as little ammunition as possible going into their games, that's the best thing that you could do.
yeah,
Um,
indeed.
we do have to talk about Colorado as well. Maybe a little bit of respect towards them as well because last year they only won one game, I think it was.
Yeah, I think
Coach
so.
Prime has yeah, Coach Prime has turned it around. They won 3 games, and even for Oregon, for Colorado, sorry, to win 3 games in this season, they were actually the over under was 2.5, so they cashed on it after three
Yeah,
weeks, and,
of
and
course,
not
we didn't know what to expect from them because it's never been done. It's a whole new team. Like what, two starters of last year are still on the roster. That's it.
yeah, they had
So it's a whole new
67
team,
transfers. So
and we didn't know what to expect. And still, right now, okay, they're 3-1, 2 wins against better opponents, if you can say so. So Nebraska
mhm,
and TCU, those are Power Five opponents. Let's not talk about Nebraska as being good yet. And then they keep it real close against Colorado State, physical matchup, and then they lose to Oregon. So we still don't know a lot about them. So yeah, okay, they got crushed in this game, but
yeah,
it's without Travis Hunter. Not that Travis Hunter
indeed.
will do everything, but he plays on both sides. So you lose him
Travis
on
Hunter
defense and you lose him on
wasn't.
offense. So
Yeah,
you lose
he
your best
wasn't like
cornerback
the
and you lose
key.
your best wide receiver. No, indeed, but you do lose your best cornerback and your best wide receiver. I don't know how long he'll be out, but once they get him back, they have better chance at winning games with him.
Yeah, but they still are without him for 2 more games, and in the next 2 games they play USC, which
Yeah.
which has like the number one pick and maybe the Heisman winner of this year
Mhm.
on the roster. Although they didn't have like the best game ever against Arizona State last weekend. Let me
Yeah,
just look it up.
USC's defense
USC's
is not
defense
that good.
isn't.
So
No, they had like 28 points against, 42-4,
mhm.
and although yeah they don't care as well, um, it's
we
still
we
not the
saw
best
we
outing
saw
to have
that in their game
against.
against San Jose State at the beginning of the year. They got a lot of points against. So it's something to watch out for because if Colorado's offense, okay, that offensive line is shaky, but it's against a bad defense. You never know. They can hold on to. They can protect Travis. No, not Travis Hunter, but Jador Sanders, of course. So if they can protect him well, they could surprise USC, but their defense has to hold up against Caleb Williams.
Yeah, but that defense won't hold up. If and
Yeah.
and no disrespect to Bo Nix, and we'll talk about him later when we're talking about Heisman. He's up there. Bo Nix is not Caleb Williams.
No,
And
he's not. Of
all
course
due
not.
respect to Bo Nix, but Caleb Williams is just on another level. You have like the counterpart for Troy Franklin at USC as well, and Zachariah Branch. So that offense is able to put up points as well. The only thing that's different is that their defense isn't as good as Oregon. So maybe we'll have a tighter matchup, but I think on offense it's just going to be a blowout. And yeah,
Yeah, but
Colorado won't be able to answer it pretty soon. Um, all
still,
right.
we've seen some bad. Not I'm not going to call them bad, but some lesser teams get through that offensive line of USC. So that could potentially still be a problem for them, even if Colorado's defense is not that good. They are good enough. They are better than San Jose State's defense, in my opinion, or better than Arizona State for that matter. So they could get through a few times more than those teams,
Yeah,
especially since they have tape now.
yeah, indeed. And the further into the season, the more you learn about a roster or a team. And we've actually now learned that the Oregon Ducks are very dangerous on offense and scary on defense as well. So
Very good
they
running
may,
backs.
yeah,
Important.
and they may not be the top of the Pac-12, but this Pac-12, as you said, is stacked. So they may be as
It's
good as any top team in other conferences. I mean, put
but
them in the Big 12. I'd like
who
to
do
see
you
them
see as the
playing.
top? Who do you see as the top team of the Pac-12? Do you see one clear top team? I don't.
There's one, and it's going to
You
be a
think of
little
Washington?
controversial. I'm thinking of Washington,
Yeah, I knew
and
that, but I thought of that, but I don't see them as a clear number one. They haven't
that's true. They
proven to
don't have a
me
clear
they
number one. Like
they
in
they,
the
they
Big
beat
12, you have
Cal
a clear
pretty
number one.
in what? Sorry, I didn't.
In the Big 12, you have a clear number
Yeah,
one. In the SEC
yeah.
as well.
And
So
still the Big
ACC,
12, watch out for
ACC.
Oklahoma. They have a
Um,
very easy schedule, I know, but still they're unbeaten. So
yeah, but they didn't
indeed,
have like
I get why you put Texas at number one there. I do so myself. But in the Pac-12, I wouldn't necessarily put Washington as number one because and not Oregon either. It's just I don't see a clear number one in the Pac-12. They're just too good, and I'm looking forward to seeing them play against each other.
yeah,
And
and
those
they
games will
will lose
decide
to
for
each
me.
other.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course,
but
but
one will lose against the other, and then the circle will be complete. Like
maybe, maybe not.
or Oregon could win against USC. USC could win against. Do they play Washington? I don't have a full view on their schedule, but like
I don't.
everybody can win against everybody at the top. But to me personally, I just put Washington a little bit above the rest, although it's
Mhm.
pretty close to three other teams or two. Um, so
At the moment,
th-
I'd say two because Utah didn't really convince me, but
yeah, but
that's
they
not gonna
they
happen.
are still playing without Cameron Rising, so I I'd,
That's
I'd
true.
like to see that happen first. But yeah,
That's true. And
we'll talk about
they're still unbeaten. So.
yeah we'll talk about you later on as well. Another game that people were pretty high about, and we've talked about it in the beginning. Ohio State at Notre Dame. College
Mhm.
Game Day was there, and okay, if I'm thinking about games that maybe have disappointed in a way, I'm thinking about this one because the game ended 17-14,
Mhm.
and the last 7 points for Ohio State come only with 1 second to go. So I don't know. Is Ohio State now this great team who kept Notre Dame to 14 points, or is Notre Dame as good because they kept an explosive offense of Ohio State? Although they do have Kyle McCord, they still have Marvin Harrison Jr. in
Yeah,
there.
but they have both very good defenses. So this,
Ohio State had the number one defense in the country going
yeah,
into week 4.
so you can expect Notre Dame to score a lot of points on that defense. So I think the Irish defense did a very good job in this game too, because keeping Ohio State with that offense with Marvin Harrison Jr. to 17 points is also impressive to me.
Mhm.
And let's say 10 because those 7 points, like you said, those came in the
Came at
last
the
few minutes with 10 men on the
minutes,
field
seconds,
on defense. Yeah,
seconds.
seconds, sorry. With a few seconds on the clock, and they only had 10 men on defense. So that's
Dumbass.
yeah, for the last two plays, they had 10 men on the field. So I'm not saying they would have stopped Ohio State with 11 men, but you sure make it harder on yourself if you just
Yeah,
play with 10 men against that offense.
especially since it was a defensive lineman who was out. And
Mm,
for the people who didn't really see it or haven't read about it, Notre Dame was defending in their own end zone, and Ohio State was at the 1 yard line of Notre Dame. And the last two plays, there was still 7 seconds on the clock. Um, Ohio State had two downs that they could still play, so it didn't really matter how many downs it was still were. It was first or second down, so they had all the opportunity to go into the end zone. They only needed like a touchdown,
It
and
was just the time that mattered at the moment.
yeah, and from the get-go, Notre Dame played with 10 men on defense. But because Notre Dame didn't have any timeouts left, Marcus Freeman, the head coach of Notre Dame, wasn't really sure if he could do something about it because it was loud as hell as well. So he couldn't really communicate with his players. And getting a new player on the field, especially defensive lineman who's not that pretty quick, it could be tricky because if Ohio State snaps the ball, it's a penalty, half the distance to the goal. And being at the 1 yard line or a half yard line makes all the difference in the world if you have a run play that you have to defend. So in a sense, I can kind of understand why Marcus Freeman wouldn't risk it because it's maybe too big of a risk to have them inching closer. But on the other, yeah, you still have to
On the other
wonder
hand, I mean, a yard
what would
or a
have
half
happened.
yard. Yeah, a yard or half yard. So you take the penalty. It's half yard closer to the end zone. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a coach, so I can't judge him too much about it. But if I were playing Madden, I would have taken the risk. I would have taken that penalty. I mean,
Yeah,
because
but
it's so essential. You're defending a run, like you said. It's so essential to have your defensive lineman there to defend a run. So
yeah,
that's why I think
maybe you'd feel
he should
more
have done it.
confident. Maybe you'd feel more confident having 11 men defending the half yard line
Because
than 10 men
like
having the
if my
defending the
team
1 yard line.
gets if my team gets the benefit of that penalty, so my team is on offense and they get half a yard, I'm thinking, okay, it's still the same play for us. So that half yard won't matter too much. So that's why, yeah, that's why I think he should have done it.
Yeah. But what have we learned now about Ohio State, Notre Dame? Can we say that those two teams are just having top-notch defenses
Yeah, of course.
against great or decent enough offenses because Sam Hartman has been playing lights out so far for Notre Dame. He's up there with the Heisman favorites. He's had about 1,000 or 1,200 yards, 14 touchdowns. So he's played amazing so far, and
Yeah,
he has Estime in his backfield, which proves a very lethal duo or tandem. So it's a great offense, and uh, yeah, I'm just a bit surprised that those offenses weren't able to put up more points because it was 10 to 14. You play 4 quarters. It's still not a lot.
no, that's true. But like we said, the number one defense in the country being Ohio State, I can I can understand why Sam Hartman and Estime only put up 14 points because this was their first real test. We can say this. Okay, they had NC State on the
Mhm.
schedule, but still, Ohio State is of a whole nother level. Um, I get where you're coming from because they had at least 40 points in every game they played,
Mhm.
and now it's only 14. So
Yeah.
maybe they could have done a better job, but I don't think Sam Hartman did that bad actually in the game. It's just it was never
It was
enough.
175 and a touchdown.
Yeah, against this defense, I think it's not bad. But yeah, I
Yeah.
know it's not enough. It should be better against better teams. It should be better also than 14 points. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt. It's the
Mm.
first real game. They will learn from this. They know they have a good defense. So they will learn to
Mm.
trust on that defense, I think, in the coming games. I know, yeah, they have USC coming. That's their big rivalry. That's the only real challenge, I think. Okay, no, I see Clemson still. Yeah, the
Yeah.
USC is
Well,
the only real.
let's.
Yeah, USC is the only real challenge I see on their schedule.
Yeah. Well,
So
next week they do have Duke, which is ranked at the moment. They are
yeah,
ranked 17th.
and
So as far
all
as
due
good teams
respect.
go,
all due respect to Duke, of course, they're doing very well the last 2 years, but Notre Dame should be able to win this.
They are playing at Duke. Hopefully the
Yeah, still.
quarterback has made his homework. For Ohio State, this game also meant a lot, and Ryan Day had something to say after the game, because you had Lou Holtz, a former Notre Dame head coach, on the Pat McAfee show, saying that he wasn't really impressed with this Ohio State team or Ohio State in general, and then Ryan Day had this to say after the game.
Like, I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now. What he said about our team, I cannot believe. This is a tough team right here. We're proud to be from Ohio, and it's always been Ohio against the world, and it'll continue to be Ohio against the world. But I'll tell you what, I love those kids, and we got a tough team.
So that was Ryan Day after the game, and he's probably a little fired up as well, because he's maybe one of the coaches that's on the hot seat this year. Winning against Notre Dame is already a big one, but everybody's actually waiting for the last game of the season, in which they play Michigan at Michigan, and most people think that if he loses that game, he's gone. But in the meanwhile, great for them that they win against Notre Dame in South Bend with the crowd behind the Irish. So great win for Ohio State. We still have 4 matches or games to go. Maybe we'll keep them a little breezier than the previous 2 ones. Maybe the last one, and I already mentioned it. Oregon State, Washington State. I think it was 21 against 14. Washington State was ranked 21, and
they were
Oregon was
first,
14.
Yeah.
Great, entertaining game. And if we talk about that game, we have to talk about one single player who's been playing lights out actually for the last few weeks. We're talking about Cameron Ward, the quarterback for Washington State. So Washington State won 38-35 against Oregon State, against the team of DJ Uyagalele, or however you pronounce his name. I think after 2 years, I've still not managed to find the right pronunciation. But great game for Washington State, who's continuing to surprise people this year. Can we maybe have a new TCU story on the horizon in Washington State?
Yeah, that's a bit too early to say. I would say so, actually. I like Washington State. It's a nice team to watch, but no, they're not on the level of TCU last year. And let's not forget, I know you won't like this, but TCU had a lot of luck in almost every win. So no, I don't think, especially with the schedule they still play, that won't be a TCU story. But in a 12-team playoff, they could have a shot at the playoffs, actually.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind.
They still play.
If we're still keeping it 12-team playoff later, but Washington State, they did very well, actually. It wasn't that close at halftime. Oregon State came back in the last quarter. So maybe they got a bit. Maybe they got a bit more relaxed in the game, and they thought, okay, this is over. Let's just play a bit softer, and that wasn't a good idea against the Beavers.
Yeah. So Washington State, Josh Kelly, wide receiver for them, had like 2 highlights in the first half. I think one was a catch, and I've shared it on Twitter actually. One was a catch, and he got into trouble, got 3 defenders around him, spinned out of it, and then rushed across the sideline to score. Then he had a one-handed grab for the score as well. He actually had 2, both in the first half, I think. So this Washington State team, watch out for them, and watch out for Cameron Ward, because he's maybe the biggest riser in big boards for this week. So PFF has him ranked as 122. I wouldn't be surprised if he's top 90, top 80, because still he has a lot of proof. But winning against Oregon State, being crowned the Pac-2 champion for this week, great stuff for Washington State, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of their schedule, because as we said, they still play Oregon, they play UCLA next week, they also play Colorado in the Pac-12, and Washington at the end of the year. So that rivalry game will also be something that we'll watch. Maybe they'll have one loss by that time. Maybe they won't.
Of course, this tells us a bit about both teams' defenses because they allowed a lot of points. Cam Ward is very good, but when you look at DJ Uyagalele, or however we do it, his
DJU.
stats, yeah, they weren't that good. It was the running backs who did it. So yeah, they still have some problems on defense, both teams actually. So
Yeah.
they should look to fix that because Oregon is, like you said, Oregon is coming up. USC, Washington is coming up at the end of the season, so they have time to fix it, but they will have to take a look at that.
Yeah, but fortunately for Washington State, they do have Jaden Hicks running around in the secondary, the safety.
Yeah.
He's one of the top 5 safeties, I think, in next year's class. So he's somebody to actually look to as well when you're watching Oregon State, Washington State. So great stuff to look forward to. We still have 3 more matchups to go, and I think the next one is going to be a game that you have more to talk about. Iowa at Penn State, the number 24 at the number 7. Whiteout game for Penn State. What did you think?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short, but yeah, good game from Penn State because against this Iowa defense, putting up 31 points and shutting them out. Okay, we won't talk about Iowa's offense. We know they are not good, but still keeping a team to 0 points is always a nice thing to do.
Especially a top 25 team. I think it was
Yeah,
pre-2000 since that happened
they were
for Penn
20.
State.
I didn't know that, but that's nice to hear. But indeed, it shows they have grown from last year. Okay, they only lost 2 last year against Michigan and Ohio State, but I have the feeling they may be more ready this year to take them on because of what I see in those games. The game at Illinois wasn't very good, but here they showed that they can do something, especially on offense and on defense. Drew Lar had 4 touchdown passes. So yeah, like we talked about before the season, it will be a good game against Ohio State is at home, I think. They are coming to Beaver Stadium. Penn State has an elite defense, so they can do what Notre Dame did and maybe even better. And if this year they play better on offense against Ohio State because that was a problem last year, they could beat them. I think it's in 2 weeks. No, if I'm right, it's the 14th of October.
Let me just check it really quickly. So they play the 21st of October against Ohio State, and
that's first. Okay.
November
Michigan.
is coming.
Yeah.
Michigan is coming to town on the 11th of November.
Okay, so they still have a month to prepare for that game, and I think they're doing a very good job. Let's see
The
what they
defense
can
already
do.
has, the defense already has 13 sacks in the season, which over 4 weeks,
so
it's a nice average.
It's hopeful for the every Lions fan because the defense has always been good. This year they're even better than they were last year, and the offense is finally showing some promise from this year. So yeah, it's good to watch Penn State right now.
And it's pretty hopeful for Penn State in the future as well because Drew Lar is still a sophomore. Keatron Allen, the running back, is still a sophomore. I think Nicholas Singleton.
Yeah.
He's a sophomore as well. So those are 3 guys, studs that will be coming back next year.
And it's probably the best running back duo that there is in college football. So that's very nice to have a running around.
I think we also mentioned it in the season preview, the big one we've launched just before the season. The best running back duo, and they already proved that they have 7 touchdowns combined on 400 or 500 yards. So,
and Drew Lar was a big question mark before the season because okay, he had promise, he was a good recruit coming out of high school, but there were still a lot of questions about him. And it's nice to see that, okay, he still struggles sometimes, that's true.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see that he's improving and he's doing very well.
Yeah. About Iowa, what do you have to think about being shut out? Although it is in Penn State, you are playing the wide out game. Penn State is always hyped up, but being a ranked team and being shut out,
Yeah, with
that's it's not
four
it's
first
not
downs.
Denver, Miami, but it's horrible. And although they played against 110,000 people in the stadium, but like you said, you have 4 first downs. I mean, Drew Allard had as many touchdowns as they had first downs. Um, Cover three looked it up. They had 33 plays on offense against 96 or 97 for Penn State. So it's impossible to generate any momentum, any game. And although their top tight end Luke Lashy was out for the season just before the game, you
Yeah,
still have to expect some yardage to
they
be put
they
forward.
did lose two of their three rushers, so
Yeah, as
that
well.
that's a big impact as well. But still, being Iowa, being the 24th, you should have scored at least some points, even if your offense is known for
Yeah,
being very bad. You still should
yeah,
have scored at least a field
yeah.
goal. I mean,
But that's
you
the
should,
one thing there's a reason I say there were 33 plays on offense. As if Penn State is that long on the field, or the offense of Penn State, that defense cannot keep up. So you see it clearly. Penn State had 3 points in the first quarter. They had 7 in the second, and then they had 14 in the third. So that defense wasn't able to keep up the pace. So I
Mhm.
think, in my opinion, that's actually why Penn State was able to put up the points, and Drew Allard has 4 touchdowns in the end, because that defense was just completely running out of gas by the end, and nobody was actually putting up any effort. Because if you see Kate McNamara not connecting on any passes because he had 5 completions on 17
Of,
attempts.
of course, you can say the same for Penn State's offense here. They had to be that long on the field because their defense was too good stopping Iowa.
That's the one thing I also thought. Like, the Penn State offense was on the field for quite a long time, but I think it's a little easier for an offense to be on the field for that long of a time instead of a
Yeah,
defense, because a defense is going to run out of gas, and an offense, they can just try to keep it going because they know what they're going to run. So there's actually a little less headspace taken up as well. So it's less tiring on the body, less tiring on the mind. Um,
still your
we
O line is also gassing out a bit, but
Yeah,
yeah,
of course.
the same here as with Oregon. I think once they got 21 points, I'm not sure it's correct. No, once they got 17-0, they got to 17-0. They thought, okay, yeah, let's just
Yeah.
keep it like this now. It's fine. Just score when you can, but not too much. We're not going to show too much. We don't
Hmm.
want Ohio State and Michigan to watch this. So let's just keep it
Yeah.
vanilla, like we said.
All right. We still have 2 ranked matchups to go, but there's a reason actually we could have talked for about 37 minutes now about these 4, because these 4 games were the best ones we've had on Saturday. The next 2 games, we can say that they were a little less. We had Ole Miss at Alabama. The rising of Jalen Milroe as a quarterback. So he was benched 2 weeks ago. Then we had Tyler Buckner play USF, and Ty Simpson actually came in because Tyler Buckner was horrible. And Ty Simpson wasn't able to impress coaches as well, wasn't able to impress the country. So Jalen Milroe is back to take over for the game, play against Ole Miss, a team that was 4-0, which was ranked. So it's always a great
Yeah.
opportunity to showcase what you can. But I have the impression that Alabama still didn't really convince people to
And neither
say
did
that they
Milrow
are.
actually. Sorry.
No, no.
Yeah.
Milroe had, like, it's always the same with that guy. He has great throws, he has great runs, and then he has these bonehead interceptions and throws, which you can keep asking questions about. So it's always one and the other with him. So that's why people don't see him as that big of a prospect, because he's just too inconsistent, or he's consistent in being inconsistent. That's actually what we can say, because he's just Jameis Winston at the moment of the college football world. He's gonna have turnovers, and
Jameis
he's gonna
Winston
have
was a very good college QB. So
yeah. Well,
it's different.
the
But I know what
Jameis
you mean.
Winston
I know what you mean. Yeah.
of the Bucks. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
indeed.
Jameis Winston of of the college world was actually pretty great, but the Jameis Winston of the NFL at the Bucks, where he had this season where he had 30
Yeah,
touchdowns and 30 interceptions. Now we have Milrow with the same, and that's actually longer than I thought I would talk about Alabama, because as I said, this team is not really convincing me that they have something to say in the top 10. They still are ranked 12th, so they moved up one spot. But that's more because other teams disappeared in between them. And
yeah.
Ole
Day
Miss,
one. So that's day one. So they should have stayed put, or indeed
yeah,
just move up one spot. So nice job.
yeah, and Ole Miss, Jackson Dart proves he's kind of an okay quarterback. When we saw him play last season, it was actually a close game between them last season, where they had like this fourth down they couldn't convert. But now they only scored 10 points against an Alabama that is defensively quite okay with Kool-Aid McKinstry and Malachi Moore. Dallas Turner had 2 or 3 sacks in the game, but still only putting up 10 points, and they had a lot of opportunities to score or to move forward as well. So
And they were
Ole
up
Miss,
at halftime though, so it was 7-6 at halftime. So
yeah,
yeah, that's not a nice game to watch if you're not a fan of one of the teams. So 7-6 at halftime, and then they just, I'm not going to say collapsed because it's not that Alabama just overclassed them. They were just
no,
better at home, and that's it actually, because Alabama wasn't impressive like you said. It's just they were better than Ole Miss. Not by a lot,
uh,
they were just better.
let's just say the SEC West is not probably taking into account Alabama. Two other teams. We talked about the Pac-12. We had a Pac-12 ranked matchup in this week again. We had UCLA against Utah, which most people were actually pretty excited about because the quarterback of UCLA, Dante Moore, he's a true freshman, highly anticipated. He was actually committed to Oregon before the season. Then he switched his commitment after Bo Nix
Because
announced his return to college football. Then he switched his commitment to UCLA. Um, he had a pretty good season coming into the game. Utah had a kind of up and down season. They convinced against Florida. Then they had this very close game against Baylor. But you were out. Cameron Rising as a quarterback, their top tight end. Now blanking on his name, but he was out for quite a long time as well. So there were some factors in there that could maybe forgive them for not being that overclassing. But now they played UCLA, and despite or although they had like this pick six at the first play of the game, if you don't count the kickoff, this game didn't actually bring anything like we expected, and there's a reason why we kept this game as the last game to discuss. Because is there really a lot to say about this game?
no, I don't think so. Just maybe to mention, Utah lost their star running back during the first half, and UCLA was just very good against that run. So without Cam Rising, it was always going to be hard in this game. That was proven. But okay, Utah was up 14-0 at halftime, and as good as UCLA was on offense, they couldn't just didn't get started, and they couldn't do anything against the
Mhm.
Utes. So yeah, a score of 14-7 at the final whistle. This wasn't what we expected of those teams actually, because UCLA and Utah last year it was a very high scoring game. I think it was in the 40s for each team. This year was a bit more disappointing. With a Yeah, we can say that they lost a lot of quality. Okay, they lost Zach Charbonnet and Dorian Thompson Robinson, the Bruins,
Mhm.
but they got a good quarterback and decent running backs. So yeah, this could have been a bit more high scoring. That's why it's disappointing. But overall,
Yeah.
it's a nice win for the
What?
Utes. They won't
Yeah.
care that much that they just scored 14 points. They scored
Um,
14. They won. That's fine. Let's go. Let's move on to next week for them.
yeah.
Um,
One bright spot
just
though, I
yeah.
do want to mention for the Utes is
Go
Logan
ahead.
Fano, the defensive end. He's a freshman, true freshman. Coming into the season, he had half a sack in this game, making his total for this year at 2.5, which is pretty good for the true freshman. He also had a tackle for loss and a pass deflection. So if we're looking for bright spots here, Logan Fano is definitely one. He was one of the best freshmen last week, probably in the top again this week.
Mm. Just one thing, both offenses need to do better in the next few weeks because otherwise they'll be going down in the Pac-12 and in the rankings because Utah is still, I don't know, where are they ranked? Ninth, eighth, ninth?
They were 11 before, and now they
Maybe they're
are
10th.
10th. Yeah,
Yeah, 10th.
they 10th.
Okay, so that's a very good ranking right now. So if they want to keep it, this offense needs to get better. I don't know when Rising is coming back, but it's essential for them, I think, that he does
Yeah, he
as
was
quick as
anticipated.
possible.
He was anticipated to be back this week, and for one or the other
Okay.
reason, I must have missed it. He was out for the game, so I would
Mhm.
expect him to be available next week for the
Yeah,
youths.
that's huge for Utah because
Yeah,
if he comes back, this offense could take flight.
yeah, because they play Oregon State, team that's still ranked. They are still ranked 19th, so
Mhm.
it's probably better for them to have him available because this Oregon
Especially,
State.
yeah, especially against that defense,
Mm,
if they can score a lot of points, they should because that will be important for their ranking later on.
mm. How the hell are we at 45 minutes already?
Yeah,
Because
I
we
don't know.
talked about it beforehand, and I am very sorry for the people listening. I hope your drive is two times half an hour, so you're able to to listen this in one day. Um, but we anticipated this podcast to be a little bit shorter. We're near the end, so we're almost looking to wrap up. But we've only talked about 6 games so far, and we still have Clemson, Florida State. That happened. We had LSU having a very close game to Arkansas. Do we need to talk about anything else? Because I have the feeling that Florida State against Clemson is still a game that we need to talk about. All
Yeah, we
right. Let's
do
let's just go ahead. Let's just go
indeed.
ahead. Let's keep this under 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Probably not,
let's
but
try to. Go ahead. Shoot.
absolutely not.
Shoot.
Um, okay, my cliff notes on this game are Florida State crawled its way to a win, a very important win. I think it was 6 or 7 games that they didn't win against Clemson, so it's important for them to win in Clemson. Clemson, on the other hand, it's a game they probably should have at least
Yeah.
tried to win, and they went to overtime, so they were actually pretty close. But you there's you have the feeling when you're watching Clemson that there's always something missing, and you have the feeling that the missing piece is at quarterback because Kate Klubnik, although he's a 5-star prospect, he's not it at the moment, and Dabo Sweeney has to abandon his thoughts on the transfer portal because he has recruited one player via the transfer portal in the offseason. One, only one.
Mhm.
Why?
Yeah, indeed.
He
I don't
he
know.
he needs
That's
to go to the transfer portal because if Clemson doesn't either recruit better, they will suck next year. Absolutely, they will suck because Will Shipley is gone. You have Jeremiah Trotter and Barrett in the linebacker room. They are gone as well. What's this team gonna be?
yeah. Of course, you get your recruits every year, but you can't keep competing without the transfer portal. Everybody does it, and you see the same problem with high academic schools. They have yeah they require a higher GPA so they can get every quality player they want to, and you see that's sometimes decreasing their quality. So Clemson has to watch out for this. They could get into hot water if they don't, but let's see how this year writes out because if Clemson has another bad year like they had the year before, it could be the end for the coach that I
Yeah,
forgot
Dabo
his name
Sweeney.
for a moment. Yeah, that was
Dabo
Sweeney
Sweeney.
indeed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
indeed.
are 0-2 in conference. 0-2.
Yeah,
They are just ranked above
against
Boston College.
and they lost against Duke. And again, all due respect to Duke, as Clemson, you should win against Duke. And it was
Hmm.
it wasn't even close. It was a bad loss. I saw
Hmm.
that one actually, but it was
Yeah.
a bad loss. So okay, you can expect to lose against this Florida State team, but Florida State isn't as good as we thought before the season. Okay, they're 4-0, but they're not
Mm.
producing the play we all expected them to. So this was your chance to to get redeemed actually and to get back into
Mm.
that playoff race maybe because with one loss it's already hard, but if you would have won this game, you still had a shot. But he needs to watch out for his job because if they lose another one, let's say I think they have North Carolina on the schedule, so that could be a third loss.
Yeah,
If
that's
they
going to
end
be a tough one for them.
if they end
They
up
still
losing
have.
one more game, yeah, that could be bad for Dabo.
Well, let's look at the schedule for Clemson really quick. They still play Syracuse, a team that is I'm not really sure on that anymore. They are 4-0, but they played Colgate, Western Michigan, Purdue, and Army. So let's just put an asterisk next to their 4-0. They play Wake Forest, who's having a bit of a down year. They are 3-1, but Sam Hartman is gone,
Same
so
reason.
yeah. They still play Miami, who's playing lights out. They have Tyler Van Dyke in there, and they have Cameron Kitchens on defense. So those are two star players. You still play NC State. Let's just say that's a win. You play Notre Dame. You play Georgia Tech, which is going to be a very important game for them. If
You
we look
play
at the
Notre
matchup,
Dame. I forgot that they play Notre
yeah,
Dame. That could be their third loss already.
yeah, they play North Carolina, which is, in my opinion, their fourth loss. Then, if they win against Miami, which I'm not completely sure on,
Mhm.
and they play South Carolina, which is always a tough team for them. They play in South Carolina.
This could
So
actually turn out dramatically for them.
yeah, it could be. Do you still see 4 wins on their schedule? It's going to be tight.
So remind me. So it's Syracuse, it's Wake
Wake Forest,
Forest.
NC State, Georgia Tech. That's probably 4.
Yeah, let's say Georgia Tech too, because okay, I like Georgia Tech, but they should win that one absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's 3. Then yeah,
South
Miami could.
Carolina at the end of the season with Spencer
I
Rattler.
I don't see them losing against and South Carolina and North Carolina and Notre Dame and Miami. I don't see that happening. So probably they win one of those.
So they play bowl
One of
game.
those 4. Yeah, they'll go bowling. I think so.
Yeah.
They're,
What to say about Florida State? Because they were hyped very much, and
Mhm.
we fell for it as well. Actually, fell for it is maybe
Yeah,
over dramatizing
they
because they are still a pretty good team.
and they had a
But
very good game against LSU, but LSU in their own way are disappointing us also. So maybe
they
a
are still
little
they are
small.
kind of
Yeah,
back on track, maybe a little.
yeah, but okay, that was convincing. Then they play Southern Miss. Yeah, okay, you had to win that one. They win convincingly. That's fine. But then
They
you have
win
a very close.
unconvincingly.
Then you have a very close game indeed to Boston College, 31-29.
Boston
That was a
freaking College.
bit of a surprise, and now you beat Clemson, but not with the most shiny performance you could have gotten. So they're 4-0. That's nice. Next week they play Virginia Tech and Syracuse. I think their
Yeah,
schedule eases up a
yeah.
bit. Not eases up because they had
They had the
two easy
toughest game
opponents.
probably on the
But
season already
uh,
at Clemson.
indeed, before the season, we said LSU and Clemson were their toughest games of the season. They won both. Now maybe okay, but Duke is ranked. Like I said, all due respect to Duke, and Miami is ranked. Okay, Florida is on the schedule too, but those are the 3 potential teams you could say they could play a close game to.
Yeah, they will still be favorites in all those games, but the spread will be a little lower in those games.
Yeah.
Although, one side note that's important for people to know, Jordan Travis is suffering from a small shoulder injury, which he's playing through,
Mhm.
and they are probably thinking about resting him against Virginia Tech, which would be a great choice because
Mhm.
Jordan Travis is not looking to win the Heisman this year. Although it's not his ultimate goal. He's playing to play in the playoffs. So if he has to sacrifice his Heisman contention in order to be healthy to finish the season, they'll probably do that. Um, but
Okay.
if he has to improve his game. But
Mhm.
otherwise, there's still some great pieces on that team because Keon Coleman is looking like a solid wide receiver 2 in the draft. I've actually heard somebody saying he's wide receiver one. I want to visit that guy and see what he's either smoking or drinking, and maybe share in the drinking part, because it must be absolutely crazy. Um, you still have
Except
Johnny
if,
Wilson over there.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, you still have Johnny Wilson over there, who's like the 6'7" wide receiver, and I mean he had this one catch against Clemson in the fourth quarter, which he just overpowered his cornerback or his matchup. Um, Jaheim Bell, tight end, is still on that roster. He finished with 26 yards on the game, but he had like this one big play. So Jared Verse on the defense is also a reason why to be very optimistic about this defense. So they still have a pretty decent enough team, but it's maybe along the conversations of Michigan and Georgia, they have to probably start convincing people that they are worth it, because LSU is 3 weeks ago, and people will start forgetting about that one because LSU had a bad game.
Yeah,
Florida State had uh, immediately profited of it. So they'll have to start ramping it up again in order to be in contention for the playoffs, because that should be their ambition, and that was probably their ambition that they talked about internally before the season.
yeah. Right now it is, of course, because you won your two hardest games. But let's maybe move on because I think we passed those 5 minutes. We still
we
have
had
a lot to
we
talk
are
about.
we are at 10 minutes. Maybe we'll start
Yeah.
cutting down a
So
little bit. One question I
maybe
had
just
for you.
talk.
I had one
Okay,
question
go
for
ahead.
you still, because I as an Iowa fan and as a Big Ten avid
As an
fan,
Iowa fan.
Penn State, and
Okay.
I want to know, how would you rank the top three teams in the Big Ten? Because we've had this imaginary scenario where they were all 11-1 at the end of the season with a loss against each other.
Mhm.
How would you rank them as of right now when you've seen all of them play so far?
Yeah. Well, now that I've seen all of them play, I think it's even more likely to get to that 11-1 scenario. Um, because okay, my ranking is Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. So that maybe clarifies it. I think Penn State could win, or should win actually, against Michigan. At home against Ohio State would be nice. I think Ohio State is still a bit too good to win against. Um, but why do I put them like that? Because Ohio State, of course, had their statement win this weekend against Notre Dame. They beat a very good opponent, a very good defense. Be it with not a lot of points, they still beat them. And Penn State and Michigan haven't played anybody yet that we think, oh yeah, that's a very nice win. Penn State struggled a bit against Illinois, but so did Michigan against some other teams.
Yeah.
And that's where the difference lies for me, because those smaller teams, because they're not that small, it's West Virginia and Illinois, so they're not small teams, they're not FCS teams, but still, I think Penn State played a bit better in those games than Michigan did against lesser teams that we thought Michigan would just blow out completely. So yeah, that's why my ranking is that way.
Yeah. I have it a bit the same as you. I put Ohio State on top because they have this convincing win against Notre Dame, and although
Mhm.
we've said that it was a defensive struggle, they still shown us that they are able to contend with a electric offense in Notre Dame and shut them down almost completely and keeping them to 14 points. I just have Michigan above Penn State because we've seen Penn State in the big games, which they were, I'm not saying less convincing, but they had some troubles, and Drew Alar is still finding his way. So as long as he's being like this above average quarterback, but not electric like you have others, he's
Mhm.
not in Heisman contention as well. And at Michigan, you have JJ McCarthy, you have Blake Corum, you have Donovan Edwards. Those, I mean, if we're talking about strong running back duos, Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards are actually up there with Penn State. And I'm
Yeah,
still waiting on Michigan playing a decent enough um, team, but as of now, they have a cupcake of a schedule. They play Nebraska, they play Minnesota next, which should be kind of reference games. until Penn State on the 11th of November. But as long as I haven't seen them play anybody, I'm still putting them above because I think in quality they are ranked just slightly above Penn State. But it's a small difference. But
Okay, so
the,
let me ask you a question because yeah, I apparently Penn State's playing Ohio State at the in Ohio State at Ohio State and Michigan at home. So do you think Michigan will be favorites in Penn State?
they will.
You
Won't
think
be
so?
by a
Okay.
lot. It will be by a touchdown.
Okay.
Less.
I would say so, but that's
It
a discussion
depends.
for
It
in a
depends
few weeks, I think.
what Penn State is doing in the next couple of weeks.
Of course,
But
the Ohio State game will will be important for the spread. If they lose big, Michigan will be favorites. If they keep it close, I think Penn State will be favored at home.
if they keep it close, that's the only scenario in which they see it being close. And they play, surprisingly, they play the 4-0 Maryland, which
Mhm.
is just outside of the top 25, I think.
I think
They
so,
are
yeah.
having a decent enough season with Tagovailoa at the helm, the brother of Tua. And that's just before the Michigan game. They play at Maryland, so that's a big test for them as well, and
Mhm.
surprisingly. So I'm still putting them slightly above it, but the spread probably won't be a touchdown. If they would have to put it now, there will be slightly less. But I think Michigan is still favored slightly. If they were playing at home, it would be a touchdown for sure, maybe 10. At Penn State, it will be a little bit closer.
Okay. Curious to see it in the next few weeks.
Yeah. All right, we are just above the 1 hour mark. What we have not talked about yet is the Heisman, but we can be pretty brief about that.
Yeah, I think
Shedeur
so.
Sanders is out. Let's just be clear about that. Yeah.
He
Okay,
had a
next.
non-game. He was sacked 7 times, so yeah,
Yeah,
not
he was
not
sacked
entirely
7
his fault,
times.
but
Yeah. Bo Nix is in the top 3 in the odds or with the odd makers. I can follow them in that regard. Just because I put him slightly above other quarterbacks. Michael Penix is my number 1, and he's the betting favorite right now as well. Caleb Williams is a second, and Michael Penix is just above Caleb Williams because he's putting up these insane video game numbers. He's already at 16 touchdowns, I think. He's
yeah.
averaging 4 a game,
Mhm. Yeah, indeed,
which is
that's crazy.
yeah, and that, nobody actually saw it coming because Penix was like this. He was injured quite a lot in previous seasons. Then he had a healthy season last year, in which he proved that he could be healthy. And then this season was going to be the confirmation. But he's actually rising in quarterback rankings. I think he's already above Drake May in the odds for second QB of the board, although it will be close. And that's just because Drake May is having a little bit less of a season that people probably expected him to
Yeah,
have, because he's
he only
having some
has 5
turno-
touchdowns and 4 interceptions, so I get why. But
yeah, and
let's see how the season
that's
goes
the
on.
only reason why he's probably just above or slightly on par with Drake May. Drake May still, and I've told it to you off the record. I've told it to the people before, or in the previous podcast. They've played a pretty hard schedule so far. They've now played Pitt, so
Minnesota, yeah.
it's going to be a little bit brighter for them in the coming weeks. I don't know their schedule by heart, but the hard part is over normally.
Yeah,
Although they
still
still
Clemson,
have
but
they still have Clemson, but that's at the later part of the season.
and Miami, of course.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see. But Drake May still is in contention for the second
Mhm.
one. But Penix is just surprised maybe of this season that he's this good and he has these numbers. As I said, 16 touchdowns, 1,600 yards, video game. We
Yeah,
have Texas, who just played okay last weekend for Quinn Ewers, JJ McCarthy, and Blake Corum. For Michigan, just did their job. So I think for Heisman, it's Caleb Williams, Michael Penix, Caleb Williams
Caleb
until
Williams,
he
Bo
proves
Nix.
otherwise, and
Yeah,
then Bo Nix. to round out the top
I
three.
don't think we have to elaborate more on that. That's the
Yeah.
ranking for now, and we still have 8 games in the regular season, so there's still a lot to happen. And now
Yep.
we're over for the most part over the non-conference games. So this is where it gets interesting.
Yeah. All right. I think we're actually at the end, unless you have some other
Well,
important
maybe
topic that you
a
want to discuss.
quick shout out to a few teams. Like Kansas is finally ranked. They're 4-0 again, like last year. They won against BYU this weekend, and it's nice to see them ranked. And another team I wanted to mention is West Virginia. They're 3-1. Nobody expected them to be 3-1. Every podcast or preview magazine I read before the season was thinking that the coach, don't ask me his name, I forgot, that he would be fired through October, but with a 3-1 record, I don't think so. So that's nice. And the third one is Northwestern, who won against Minnesota. I mean, who expected Northwestern to be 2-2? I mean, I
Who
think
expected Northwestern to be anything?
I think I bet them like the under on the season, and they already won 2 games. So
Yeah.
that under
Well,
will not
Minnesota
be.
is having a lesser season. They lost Ibrahim in the off season. They lost their quarterback as well, so it's a difficult season for them as well. But still, losing against Northwestern is probably what
With
nobody expected.
with everything going on at Northwestern, they shouldn't have lost to them. But okay, fine. And maybe one
No,
game we didn't talk about, Arkansas LSU, was a very close game. So that's maybe why I'm not that high anymore on LSU. They should have beaten Arkansas by more points. They won 34-30.
yeah, Arkansas is like this prototypical average team, and people are actually kind of seeing through it. Although they have KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders in there, both running backs. KJ Jefferson is just able to throw the ball as well.
Mhm.
But Arkansas is just average, and LSU not being able to obliterate them like they done last week with Mississippi State, maybe
Yeah,
a bigger surprise.
the thing is, Arkansas had two opportunities within the 10-yard line, and they had two field goals and no touchdowns. So if they just made one touchdown, they would have won. But okay, let's not discuss that game too much. They lost. They could have won. They lost. That's why LSU is not that high in anyone's mind.
Yeah, I think we're gonna wrap up. Otherwise
Yeah.
I'd still want to discuss the AP poll, but let's just keep it at that. You've mentioned the most important teams in Kansas being ranked. Mizzou is one we could have talked about as well, but that's just
Maybe you can
maybe for
mention
another podcast.
Fresno State, because Fresno State being
Yeah.
ranked is not something we would have expected this year. So that's nice for them. Let's see if they can keep it up. But they're 4-0, so it's a nice team.
All right. To wrap up, we have 4 ranked matchups next week. If you want to see or want to know more about them, you'll have to wait for a preview. It's coming out on Friday or on Saturday. So keep out or keep an eye on our socials for that one. If you have not subscribed yet to the newsletter, you can already do that on afcbelgium.com. That's our website where all our blogs are posted, and you can subscribe over there. Just give us a like on this on this video on YouTube. Share it with your friends on podcast platforms, and we'll be glad to see you next week. Thank you, Alexis, and thank you for listening. Bye bye.